Islam. Ye are the children of one Father, provided for by his care, and the breast of one mother has given ye suck. Let the bonds of affection therefore unite thee with thy brother, that peace and happiness may dwell in thy father's house. And when ye separate in the world, remember the relation that bindeth you to love and unity, and prefer not a stranger before thine own blood. If thy brother is in adversity, assist him. If thy sister is in trouble, forsake her not. So shall the fortunes of thy father contribute to the support of his whole race, and his care be continued to you all in your love to each other. At this time, I'd like to recite the Moorish American prayer, because this is the source from which we draw our strength. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. First off, I'd like to rise, walking in Jerusalem, just like John, giving praise to Allah, the author, the creator, the governor of the world, almighty, eternal, and incomprehensible. I'd like to give honor to Allah's holy and illustrious prophet, Noble Drew Ali, the founder of our address, the Moorish Science Temple of America. I'd like to give honor to all of those, and honor to all of you that have and will aid and assist us in this, our divine and gigantic mission, the uplifting of fallen humanity. And last but not least, I'd like to give a special honor to effort, because so many of us don't even try. At this time, I'd like to read from the Moorish Holy Quran, the book of the seven seals. And none was able to open and read from its sacred pages the messages of purity and love. At this time, I'd like to read from chapter 46 of the Moorish Holy Quran. And 46 reads on this wise: the foundation of Christianity began in Rome. The Roman nation founded the first church, of whom crucified Jesus of Nazareth, for seeking to redeem his people from under the Roman yoke and law. Jesus himself was of the true blood of the ancient Canaanites and Moabites and inhabitants of Africa, seeking to redeem his people in those days from the pressure of the pale-skinned nations of Europe. Rome crucified him according to their law. Then Europe had peace for a long time, until Muhammad I came upon the scene and fulfilled the works of Jesus of Nazareth. The holy teachings of Jesus was to the common people, to redeem them from under the great pressure of the hands of the unjust, that the rulers and the rich will not oppress the poor, also that the lion and the lamb may lay down together, and neither will be harmed when morning came. These teachings were not accepted by the rulers, neither by the rich, because they loved the principles of the 10th commandments. Through the 10th commandments, the rulers and the rich live, while the poor suffer and die. The rich, and through love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, all men are equal to seek their own destiny and to worship under their own vine and fig tree, after the principles of the holy and divine laws of their forefathers. All nations of the earth in these modern days are seeking peace. But there is but one true and divine way that peace may be obtained in these days, and it is through love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice being taught universally to all nations in all lands. Thus we just had a reading of the Moorish Holy Quran that was divinely prepared by our holy prophet Noble Jew Ali for our earthly and divine salvation. Again, I'm always honored to be able to come before our Portland listening audience to talk to you about the last prophet in these days and time, Prophet Noble Jew Ali. It's very important that we talk about this subject matter that I have before me this afternoon because it's important. And as you study the teachings of the Holy Prophet Noble Jew Ali, a lot of this stuff will become manifested unto you. Because we said here a number of times in the Moorish Voice and on this broadcast about Noble Jew Ali being the last prophet in these days and time. And a lot of people can't get with this. You can't get with this because we're saying that Noble Jew Ali is the last prophet. He said the book tells us that whenever a nation is in need of a prophet, Allah will send one. But we hear all the time is that Muhammad is the last and the seal of the prophets, and after that, ain't no more gonna come. But that's not what we're taught. We are not taught that in our literature, and we're gonna get into that today because it's important that I'll do. Just like right now, Ramadan have just started. And you have a lot of people that's really fasting during the month of Ramadan. And I know 1,000 brothers and sisters that was members in the Moorish Temple of America. They have been fasting for the last 50 years. But what I have in my hand right now, is a copy of a case that the Moorish Science Temple of America at 762 West Baltimore Street had to use when we went to court. And it's very important that we get into all this stuff today because it's important that you understand because there's a billion things out here in this society that we're listening to. And all these things that we are listening to have separated us from the teachings of the Holy Prophet, Noble Jew Ali, because if Muhammad is the last and the seal of the prophet, then the Moorish Science Temple of America is out of order. It's out of order because it's saying that Muhammad is the last and the seal. But the book tells us whenever a nation is in need of a prophet, Allah will send one. So we know that we as Moors went into Spain. We went in Spain in 711. And when we went in Spain in 711, we went in Spain to give Europe civilization, to rise them out of the mucky mud. Now, in 1492, the Moors were still known as Moors because truth don't change nor pass away. But in 1492, when the last stronghold of the Moors fell in Granada, Spain, a new science came in. And the reason why a new science came in is because all of those of African descent lost our nationality. And when we lost our nationality, we was no longer called Moors. Because if you study your history, they tell you that when the Moors went into Spain in 711 to give Europe civilization, we was Moors. But we know too that the head of Satan was taken off in 1453 Byzantine. And when the head of Satan was taken off in 1453 Byzantine, we Moors had fought with the Ottoman Turks to restore the Islamic creed. What do I mean by that? We fought with the Ottoman Turks because the reason why we fought with the Ottoman Turks, we had to because we was known at that time as Muslims. But now we know in 1492, when the last stronghold of the Moors fell in Granada, Spain, some science came about, just like in the 15th century. In the 15th century, this is when something started rising that we ain't even looking at today. Because as I said, in 1453, when we was in Spain giving Europe civilization, we were still known as Moors. Truth don't change. Man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. So let's get some understanding of this. So we was Muslims when we fought with the Ottoman Turks. But when the last stronghold of the Moors fell in Granada, Spain, another lesson came in. And what do I mean by that? There was a need for us to talk to Allah, because we lost our nationality and we lost our divine creed, and we was following the customs and the mere ideas of man, things that have never done us any good, but have always harmed us. So let's go back again. I want to go back to the 15th century. It's important that I go back to the 15th century because us as a people don't want to go back to the 15th century. And the reason why we don't want to go back to the 15th century, because through the advent of slavery, then Allah had to send us somebody to redeem us from our sinful ways and to warn us of a great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth, because the wrath came upon the earth. The wrath came upon the earth when we stopped calling ourselves who our forefathers were. That's why the book say man today is what his forefathers were yesterday, and there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extends beyond the great universe creator, Allah himself. So we cried in the wilderness. We cried in the wilderness asking Allah to send us somebody to redeem us from our sinful ways and to warn us of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth, because the wrath have come upon the earth because the last stronghold of us fell in Granada, Spain. And this is when Christianity got its rise. That's why today I read from the chapter, it said that the foundation of Christianity began in Rome. It said that the Roman nation founded the first church, of whom crucified Jesus of Nazareth for seeking to redeem his people from under the Roman yoke and law. So now we talking about the Roman yoke and law. And it's very important that we understand what I'm talking about when we talking about the Roman yoke and law, because I'm looking at my brothers and I'm looking at my sisters. And when I look at my brothers and when I look at my sisters and I read about the foundation of Christianity, because the foundation of Christianity began in Rome. We talking about the Roman nations. And the Roman nation, what they did was took our literature, took my Jesus, took Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary, took my forefather, buried him in Vatican Square. So now, in the 15th century, they took my Jesus. Brother looked just like me. His mother was always known as a Jewish girl. Jesus' mother, Mary, was always known as a Jewish girl. But in the 15th century, a lot of stuff took place. Not just the foundation of Christianity, but they done took everything, because in all the world there's two things. One is truth, and the other is falsehood. And falsehood is that which seem to be. One minute you will it, the next minute you willeth not. So now we're looking into Asia. You have Asia and you have Europe. In all the world, ain't but two, Asiatic and European. So now we're looking at a lot of people right now who call themselves Asiatic. But now we're looking at the slave trade, and we're looking at a lot of people that was involved with the slave trade, and they had a nationality. I don't know if you call yourself Hebrew Israelite or what you call yourself, you still my brother, because we're one of the same. Because when the slave trade came into effect, and when we first went into Spain to give European civilization, we had different religious persuasions, but all of it came out of Asia. And a lot of things was taken out of Asia. What do I mean? I'm going back again to a lesson that I gave the other week about the good sister Kamala Harris, who was the vice president of the United States and who ran for the office of the president. And she had a husband. She had a husband that's a German, right out there. When you begin to study, because I remember the time when we was in Vietnam, because I'm a Vietnam vet. When we was in Vietnam, two things was transpiring. They would send us to Vietnam, and they will also send us to Germany. And the reason why a lot of those of African descent was going to Germany during that time, because they was on a mission. And all those people that was called Germans are no longer called Germans. A lot of them call themselves those people that had a six-pointed star, the so-called Jews. And the reason why I say Jew, because you got Asiatic and you got European. You one or the other. But you done took my father. You done buried him in Vatican Square, took on our names. Now all those people that was so-called Germans are still Germans, but they done took the birthright. That's why they took Mary's birthright and called somebody else the Jewish girl. When you begin to talk about Jewish, and when you begin to check your record, everybody is Jewish or of African descent. Asiatic. You got Asiatic and you got European. Those that's Asiatic was those that were living according to the word of God. Those that was European are those who stole my birthright. You want my Jesus. Because we think, as brothers and sisters, that when the slave trade came about, only one thing took place. And the only thing that took place, we was running around with a collar, somebody else dictating our movements and telling us now that we're no longer who our forefathers were, because there was something that transpired during the Atlantic slave trade that we missed the point. Because, like I said, Kamala Harris, her husband, look at him. You can look at him and see that he's a European. You call him white. Look at him. So if you look at him and he looked just like a European, then something must be wrong somewhere, because a birthright coming up missing that you done took. You done took it from me. You done took it from me. That's why we used to hear him say all the time that they buried Jesus. What you mean they buried Jesus? They took Jesus' name. We know some of the great fathers who was Jesus came, who they are, what their history is, who their forefathers were. But when you look at that, you're looking at Jesus. You're looking at Zacharias. You're looking at Mary. You're looking at Elizabeth. But these are our forefathers. But being through the advent of slavery, somebody else done took them. You done took the name. That's why I say Christianity came about in the 15th century. And if Christianity came about in the 15th century, I ain't got no problem with that. But be yourself when you come about in the 15th century. Use your own language when you come about in the 15th century. Because in the 15th century, this is when they took Jesus. They said, look here, man, what we got to do now is this. We done got these chumps in slavery. We done got everything from them. We done took everything from them. Even we got their names now. They look just like us, but they're using our name. You call them Christians. And I don't have no problem with you calling them Christians. But you know what? When you talk about Christianity, you can't talk about Jesus. And the reason why you can't talk about Jesus when you talk about Christianity, because Jesus was of Moorish descent. Jesus himself was of the true blood of the ancient Canaanites and Moabites and inhabitants of Africa, seeking to redeem his people in those days from the pressure of the pale-skinned nations of Europe. Rome crucified him according to their law. Then Europe had peace for a long time until Muhammad I came upon the scene to fulfill the works of Jesus. But we just said Jesus himself is of the true blood of the ancient Canaanites. See, when you talk about Canaanites, you're talking about the Hittites, you're talking about the Amorites, you're talking about the Moabites, because these names were of Moorish descent. But when the Europeans was able to put us in slavery, they was able to take our names and give them to themselves. They said Jesus himself. They said, well, you give him brief the line genealogy which Jesus came. Or they said, some of the great father through which Jesus came. And look at this again, Abraham. Abraham wasn't always Abraham. He first was Abram, and then he became Abraham. He became Abraham when he found grace in the eyes of God. And when you find grace in the eyes of God, then that means that you are doing things that God say do. You're learning to love instead of hate. You're taking on something else that don't even belong to you. So now we're looking at Asiatic and European. Listen to this. Now, if you say that you are European, listen, if you say that you are Asiatic, we got to look at this. Because when you begin to talk about the advent of slavery, who are we talking about? Because all of those people, they call themselves Jew, are European. They're not Asiatic. They're European. Their customs, their culture, their heritages, and their tradition. But what they did was, through the advent of slavery, they gave us a name that belonged to them, but it really wasn't theirs. See, they began to call us Negro, colored, and black, and they gave us that same religion, which was Christianity, which was founded in Rome. And it was the Roman nations that founded the first church, of whom crucified Jesus of Nazareth for seeking to redeem his people from under the Roman yoke and law. So now, we had a meeting the last couple of weeks. And it was very important that we had these meetings, and I was on what they have called a podcast. And on this podcast, they was talking about words like Negro, colored, and black, because they had a Black History Month. And the only black flag that I know is the one that killed roaches. So when they have the Black History Month, they're explaining to the people something about black history. And history is his story. So we have his story and we have our own story. And this is why I know Noble Ali came to this earth, because Allah sent him. Allah sent him because we was crying in the wilderness. And through the advent of slavery, we lost everything. We lost our name, we lost our customs, we lost our culture, we lost our heritage, we lost our tradition, and we lost the character. See, there was a character in us that we need to understand. We was in this same conversation, and we listening to the brothers and sisters talk. We listen to brothers like me, who is a Negro, colored, and black. And I'm a Negro, colored, and black because I've taken on those principles. But Allah has given these things to raise us out of the murky ethers of the flesh. So here in the Moorish Science Temple of America, when Allah sent Noble Drew Ali, he came to redeem us from our sinful ways. Now, how did he come to redeem us from our sinful ways and to warn us of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth? Now we're talking about a wrath. They're talking about the wrath of Allah. So how do we get hooked up with the wrath of Allah? We get hooked up with the wrath of Allah by not living according to the fruits of the Spirit. Because the European can't live according to the fruits of the Spirit because their spirit and my spirit are not the same. We are two different spirits altogether. That's why I say, why did Allah send Jesus to this earth? And it say to save the Israelites from the iron hand oppression. See, there's an iron hand oppression of the pale-skinned nations of Europe who was governed a portion of Palestine at that time. So now let's look at Palestine. Let's look at Palestine. What history did Drew Ali give us about Palestine? What did Drew Ali tell us about learn to love instead of hate? What did Drew Ali tell us that we are Negro, colored, and black? Now, I remember 50 years ago that when the Elijah Muhammad passed, I think this was 1975. Matter of fact, it was 1975 because I knew him and knew a lot of members of his organization. But a lot of them, they were listening to his son, Ward D. Muhammad. And Ward got everybody to start fasting. Didn't talk about nationality. He was telling everybody that they needed to fast. Because we've been fasting all the time. When Noble Drew Ali's birthday came, we was fasting 7 days on Drew Ali's birthday. We've been doing that all the time. But Drew Ali came with the methodology that was conducive and that Allah sent him to bring us this wisdom, like I like to say again. When we used to hear him talking about Jesus' mother, Mary, they always would say that Mary was a Jewish girl. But how can Mary be a Jewish girl when all of the Europeans, even Kamala Harris' husband, and all those Europeans, like the president of the United States, Biden, all these Europeans at that time, they was of a different concept. They was of a different ideology, and we didn't accept it. We didn't accept it. Matter of fact, we have our own language right now. And the reason why we have our own language, because somebody else gave us a language that wasn't ours. They started calling us something who we were not. So what is your nationality? It's a Moorish American. Why are we Moorish American? Because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. Who are these Moroccans? They are the descendants of the ancient Moabites. See, we listen to the Moabites now. Because when you talk about Moabites, you got to be talking about Ruth. You got to talk about Ruth the Moabite. Because from day one, we've been beefing with the Europeans. We was fighting with the Europeans. We was telling the Europeans that Allah never made a heaven for man. He never made a hell. We are creators and make our own. It said, stop looking for heaven in the sky. He said, open up the windows of your heart, and like a flood of light, heaven will come. And listen to this. We talking about heaven will come. But you got two forces now. Because I'm looking at the red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center. And the 5 points represent love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So now when we begin to talk about the highest principles known to man, which is love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. See, when we talking about that, then we saying that there's something different because you got a 6-pointed star also. And the 6-pointed star is the star of the beast. So when Drew Ali came with the methodology that was conducive to you and me to bring us back under the banner. Because we had lost the banner. We had went somewhere else. We had started worshiping under somebody else's vine and fig tree, forgetting our own. So here in the Moorish Temple of America, you hear everybody fasting. Everybody's fasting. A lot of them all just finished fasting. Because you have to understand, when we say that when we went into Spain, we talked to Allah to send us a prophet. When Allah sent us a prophet, a lot of those European things have changed. Because a lot of those things, they stole too. So when Jew Ali came on the scene, he told the Moors, he said, yeah, you was Muslim. He said, but now you got to worship under your own vine and fig tree, because all these lessons that you'll be given from somebody else is yours anyway. They stole it. They took your forefathers. They done buried Jesus in Vatican Square. So when they buried Jesus, you go out to churches today. Everybody I know, I'm talking about when I was a child, everybody went to church. And when everybody went to church, they prayed. And they prayed to Jesus. And we like that. We like that you prayed to Jesus, because when you prayed to Jesus, that meant that the Europeans wanted your Jesus. So they buried Jesus in Vatican Square, but they took on the name and started calling themselves Christians. Because Jew Ali said the foundation of Christianity began in Rome. He said it was the Roman nation. Listen, he said it was the Roman nation that founded the first church of whom crucified Jesus. So now the Roman nation founded the first church and who crucified Jesus, that means they took your consciousness, they took your customs, they took your culture, they took your heritages, they took your traditions and kept them for themselves. But they revised a lot of things. And now they got all of our brothers and sisters. Man, I got family. I have a lot of family members that have a lot of churches. But a little bit of principles that they gave us are principles that we needed. We needed these principles to redeem us from our sinful ways and to warn us of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth. Now, what wrath are we talking about? We talking about a wrath that came upon us or a wrath that came upon somebody else. Because you can't call yourself who I am, because we are not the same. Man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extend beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. I remember years ago, when I first joined the Moorish Temple of America, they was teaching us some things. And the thing that they was teaching us, we needed to know them. We needed to know the thing that was being taught to us, because these are not the things that Noble Drew Ali taught us. Noble Drew Ali gave us something totally different. But I want to go back, because they say the Moors fought with the Ottoman Turks in 1453 to restore the Islamic creed, because we was Moors. We was Muslims. And we fought with the Ottoman Turks to restore the Islamic creed, because the Europeans, they took over. They done took over, and they done took your Jesus, they done took everything. So right now, we're Negroes, because Negro is a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contained black water. So they say we are not Negroes. Drew Ali told us that. He told us that in our literature. He said we're not colored. He said colored is anything that has been painted, stained, varnished, or dyed. Every day we hear people always talking about, I'm not black, I'm not colored, I'm not Negro. But you know what? You better look at this, because we're dealing with nationality. Everybody have a nationality except you and me. This is why Allah came to Drew Ali to give him our nationality, because this woke us back up, because we had been asleep. We had no nationality. We had no name. And we keep talking about Murray. We keep talking about Joseph. We keep talking about Elizabeth. We keep talking about Zachariah. All these were brothers and sisters of Asiatic descent. They wasn't of European descent. They was Asiatic descent. So right now, you have Asiatic and you have European. So when you look at Kamala Harris's husband, is he Asiatic or is he European? Let's look at this. I want you to answer this for yourself. Because look at him. Could I be an Asiatic? If I said that I was an Asiatic, would I be of African descent or European descent? Yeah, it couldn't be a both of them, because one without the other is but half. Man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. Man can't serve two masters at the same time, because there's two masters right now. There's an Asiatic master and there's a European. Now the whole world was once known as Asia. At that time, Europe wasn't even in existence. And that's what we got to look at, because we're back at Kamala Harris right now. Kamala Harris' husband is a European, but they want to make him out of an Asiatic, because in all the world there was two things. One of them is me, and the other one is Kamala Harris' husband. Asiatic and European. I'd like to reiterate, even in Vietnam, they will always talk to us about the Germans, because in the United States of America, there was two forces that they was battling. One of them was Germany, the other was Vietnam, because through the slave trade. Now, when we're talking about the slave trade, and when we go back into the slave trade, we got to look at something. We got to look at something, because they took your forefathers. Listen to this. They took your forefathers and your foremothers and buried them in Vatican Square. Now look at this again. We're talking about the Vatican now. Let's look at the Vatican. When you go to Vatican, you're talking about the gangsters too. That's why, I can't do certain things, because we have a mission to bring our people out of darkness into the light. Now, if you bring somebody out of darkness into the light, what are you doing? You telling them something that they need to hear, because you telling them that man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extend beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. So we're at the end of the barrel. We sitting in the back seat. We know that we are not Negro, colored, and black. We know that you can fast whenever you want to fast. But when Allah sent Noble Ali gave us a lesson on Ramadan. We had Ramadan back then. I remember that we was in a room. I was young, just joining the temple, and they was talking to us. They was talking to us about the Holy Prophet Noble Ali. And they was talking to us about why did Allah send Jesus to this earth? Because there was a reason for Allah to send Jesus to this earth. It said to save the Israelites from the iron hand oppression of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, who was governing a portion of Palestine at that time. So Allah had to send Jesus to this earth. And when Allah sent Jesus to this earth, he sent Jesus to this earth to wake us up. Because like I said, when we went into Spain, we was teaching the gospel, the everlasting gospel. The resurrection of the dead is not confined to Jew or Greek. Listen, the resurrection of the dead is not confined to Jew or Greek. It is the heritage of every man of every time and clime, and we are here a demonstrator of the power of man. That's why Jesus said, let me into your dismal crypts, and I'll pass the hardest of your tests. the height that any man have gained, these I will gain. So what's taking place? When Noble Ali came, talked to the great God Allah, and told the sinners that we see now that Jesus came to redeem us from our sinful ways, to let us know that we were Negro, colored, and black, because these names was given to slaves. Okay, given to slaves by who? By slave holders. So now, what is the difference? These Europeans came and gave us something that wasn't for us, but he say that why did Allah send Jesus to this earth? So we talking about Allah, who is the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So the 14th chapter of St. John said, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me, for in my Father's house are many mansions. And if it was not so, I would have told you. So we're looking at many mansions now. We have a brother that's in the church. We have a brother that's in the synagogue. We have brothers everywhere, but they say, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me, for in my Father's house are many mansions. So we see that there's a many mansions. So if I sit down with the Chinese, and the Chinese talking to me about the holy breath, then that's my brother. Because many people have different understandings and different concepts of God. You call yourself one thing when you can't. You call yourself another thing which you can. Because man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who was able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father, unless it's by extending beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. I remember when lessons was given about two different concepts. And when the lessons was given about the two concepts, what did they say? They said that Jesus was of the true blood of the ancient Canaanites and Moabites and inhabitants of Africa, seeking to redeem his people in those days from the pressure of the pale-skinned nation of Europe. Rome crucified him according to their law. Then Europe had peace for a long time until Muhammad I came upon the scene to fulfill the works of Jesus of Nazareth. So we ain't even studying yet. We haven't begun to look into the literature that we have. This is why you go to a Moorish Science temple, and when February comes and we're talking about certain concepts, certain ideology, certain black history, we can't talk about it. We can't talk about black history, because when you begin to talk about black history, what you are doing, you're European. Because you're using the spirit in you, you're using the word in you that come from the European nation. And like I said, Jesus himself was of the true blood of the ancient Canaanite and Moabite. But they done took Jesus, and they done took our literature, took Jesus, buried him in Vatican Square. And see, when they buried Jesus in Vatican Square, they did the same thing to his mother. I got to go back into that again, because we need to keep talking about this, because Jesus' mother's name was Mary. See? And if Jesus' mother is Mary, and his grandmother is Elizabeth, and she is the Jewish girl, how do all these Europeans today, get a chance to call themselves the six-pointed star? Because what you done, you done stole something, and you done buried something, and because of the advent of slavery, you done gave it to me. So now, you giving me what you want me to have. Same thing in the school system. Same thing. They give you the lesson that they want you to have, and the ones that they don't want you to have, they don't give them to you. But because of Juali and Allah talking, they was able to give Jew Ali some things to bring to us, and the European know it. And it ain't gonna last. It ain't gonna last. Because you got to give back to Caesar what belonged to Caesar. Now, who is Caesar? Who is Caesar? And they talking about giving back to Caesar what belonged to Caesar. What are you giving back to Caesar? You're giving back to Caesar who his forefathers and who his foremothers were. And they was taking yours and my forefathers and gave it to themselves. Now, you're looking at the European women and you're looking at the European man. And neither is who they are. Because man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. So now you fasting during the month of Ramadan. And that's a good thing. Because you're cleaning out, you're cleaning your system. See? And what is your religion? My religion is Islamism. And why is your religion the religion? Because from Allah it came. When a nation is in need for a prophet, Allah will send us one. And we was in need for a prophet. Because during the advent of slavery, when we fell, these Europeans just took charge. And 10 years they was working. That's why when you hear brothers talking about Asiatic, and when you hear brothers talking about European, when you hear somebody talking about Asiatic, you know they're talking about you. When you hear somebody talk about European, that means that they're Asiatic, but they married a European. That's why so many brothers and sisters that we meet, they might have 5 or 6 children. They might be of African descent, but they women or they men is of European descent. So that means that somebody is not worshiping under their own vine and fig tree because you giving me European concepts. You giving me European ideologies. So man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extend beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. I want to leave this with you too, because they said, well, you giving brief the line genealogy through which Jesus came. Then they talked about a lot of other things. But now we're talking about 2 different bodies, 2 different grand bodies. And the reason why you have 2 is because when Drew Ali was on the scene, you had so many brothers and you had so many sisters that was working with Rome to destroy the custom, the culture, the heritage, and the tradition. And when all these Europeans did that, half of them was gone. You had Amelia Hill, you had Small Bay, you have Lovett Bay, and you have Former Bay. Matter of fact, Amelia Hill left Chicago when this brother Amelia Hill, C. Kirkland Bay, F. Nelson Bay, and J. Blakely Bay. When they came about, Amelia Hill left Chicago. And reason why he left Chicago, because when you talk about C. Kirkland Bay, F. Nelson Bay, and J. Blakely Bay, the reason why they formed another body was because, just like Jim Champson left the prophet and went over there with the European, when the prophet went over there in 1928 to have that meeting, there was a lot of brothers that came back, and for 2 or 3 years they was talking about moving. Just like the brother told us recently up there in Chicago when I was up there. They said, man, all them years ago, we didn't hear nothing about those who called them C. Kirkland Bay, F. Nelson Bay, J. We didn't hear anything about them. We ain't know that they was in existence until 3 years later. That is because the silent brotherhood didn't speak. They just marched and they counter-marched. And what they did was, they got all of the sheiks together, because if you're looking at it right now, you get all the sheiks together, and those that was with the European, there's a whole lot of them that was European, working with the European, Elijah and them, You know what Elijah I'm talking about. When they left the prophet, after the prophet passed for him, you had a lot of other people that did the same thing. You know, they left the prophet. They left the prophet and started going to the Europeans, getting money, crossing us, and everything else. So we need to understand something. We need to look at this. This is why I was happy about the Cook Bays. When this sister, Weaver Bay's daughter, when she interviewed those two brothers, one of the lessons that she would always talk about, and this lesson was very important. She would talk about C. Kirkland Bey, F. Nelson Bey, J. Blakely Bey, Millie Ill Small Bey, Lover Bey, and Form Bey. I was told one time, I was messed up. I said, man, I don't think I want to be a part of this Moorish Science Temple because of things that was given to us. Even they said some of them, man, so many things that we have to sit down and talk about it. Because I'm looking now, all the brothers and all of the sisters that been in the Moorish Science Temple of America for a lot of years. Someone got it all, now they know it all. They know everything but their own ignorance. But the people is crying out. The people is crying out to you and me. So now, what we're looking at this thing when they were saying everybody needs some reparation. We calling ourselves black people. How can you ask for some reparation when you calling yourself black? And the only black flag I know is the one that killed roaches. So we got to look at this because there's some issues. Drew Ali said there's but one supreme issue for my people to use to redeem that which was lost. And this is what we need to look at. Because right now, if you call yourself black, you can't deal with reparation because man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. So we got to look at that because there's some lessons that we're missing. And the lesson that we are missing is not coming from Noble Drew Ali, because everything that Noble Drew Ali gave us came from Allah, the great God of the universe. And Drew Ali had some troubles too, because what he was trying to do, that's why you hear a lot of brothers say they're on the national side and they're not on the national and the divine side, but Drew Ali brought us both sides. He brought us the national side and he brought us the divine side. And the reason why you have both sides is because he brought us nationality and he brought us divine creed. Nationality is the order of the day. Man today without a nationality is just like a tree without roots. So we got to come under one head like the prophet left it and go back to that state of mind, divine and national principle, because there's a supreme issue that we must use. We won't have to talk to these Europeans about these issues, but you can't demonstrate it as a black man. The only black flag I know is the one that killed roaches. And man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extend beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. So in 711, 1492, I said this before, 92, 93, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 15. That 15th century is something that we need to look at, because this is when they changed the whole science dealing with the 15th century. This is when the European nations took charge, took all the records, took our forefathers, buried us in Vatican Square, took on our name, and now we are Negro, colored, and black. I taught earlier about when I was in high school, how the Europeans took all our language, the things that we had in Dunbar High School, Washington, D.C., and they flipped the script. They flipped the script. So praise Allah and on to the Prophet, Noble Drew Ali, because man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. We got to look at this. The whole world was once known as Asia. All them Europeans, this Europeans today, they was Asiatic. The whole world was Asian. And what did that was your character, your customs, your culture, your heritages, and your tradition. When you live according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, loving your brothers and sisters, telling them the truth, that they live in peace, have freedom, and justice will come to us all. So we talking about Asiatic. And when you talk about Asiatic and European, you're talking about a thought pattern. And when you're talking about a thought pattern, you're talking about love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harm. Why did Allah send Jesus to this earth? Save the Israelites. Let's look at the Israelites. Because we know who the lost tribes of Israel is. So we're talking about to save the Israelites from the iron hand oppression of the pale-skinned nations of Europe. So we're talking about the pale-skinned nation of Europe now, because they was governing a portion of Palestine at that time. How long have that been? How many years have that been? What transpired before we were brought to these shores during the advent of slavery? We lost everything. We lost our father and we lost our mother. But man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. So we was talking about Jesus. We was talking about Mary. We was talking about Anna, Mary's mother, who was married to Jacquin. And when you talk about Jacquin, there was two pillars. And these two pillars were Jacquin and Boaz. And that's our foundation. The Europeans took all that. That's why when I keep saying every day that Mary was a Jewish girl, that's one of the things that the Europeans took. They took Mary. They took Jesus. They took our forefathers. They buried us in Vatican Square. They took on our name. So what I would do right now, I'll complete later, but I'll close out with the Moorish American prayer. Allah, Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Jew Ali. Amen. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, Marlin, wade in the water.